Namaskar, my friends, and welcome back to the Pranayama podcast. This is a place where we learn and discover beautiful insights and revelations from the yoga journeys of the direct disciples of Yogacharya BKS Iyengar, who are senior yoga teachers. My name is Katerina Fiadyuk, and in this episode, I'm pleased to welcome Eyal Shifroni. Eyal Shifroni is among the most senior Iyengar yoga teachers in Israel. His journey in Iyengar yoga began in 1982, and since then, he has been studying, teaching, and writing about the Iyengar method. In 1988, he went to Pune for the first time, where he studied directly from Yogacharya BKS Iyengar. Eyal says that ever since his childhood, he has been fascinated with the stories about the yogis. When he was 10 and he was studying the subject of India at school, he attempted his first yoga asana and even stood on his head with his legs in Padmasana. Eyal holds a PhD in computer science from the Israeli Institute of Technology, and he taught computer science in colleges in Israel for many years. As one of the most senior Iyengar yoga teachers in Israel, Eyal is active in the Iyengar Yoga Association of Israel. He conducts teacher training courses and takes an active part in the certification process. Eyal has written 8 books on Iyengar Yoga. His first book, A Chair for Yoga, was internationally acclaimed and won him a status of a chairman in the Iyengar Yoga community. His recent book, Yoga in Nature and Natural Props for Yoga, is a personal exploration of the yoga asana practice with natural props. Eyal has also translated 2 of B.K.S. Iyengar's books into Hebrew, The Tree of Yoga and Light and Pranayama. Currently, Eyal teaches at his school, the Iyengar Yoga Center of Zichron Yaakov in Israel, and conducts yoga workshops in Israel and around the world. In this episode of the podcast, we would learn what Svadhyaya, the study of self, means for Eyal Shifroni, about his visits to Pune and his first impressions of Guruji BKS Iyengar. Join us as we explore the 3 major practices that define any spiritual path. Why is Iyengar Yoga so big and popular in Israel? Why should the leaders of our country study yoga? How could the practice of yoga asana in nature help you to enhance your practice, open your body, and let you stay focused almost effortlessly? And why does Eyal believe that natural props are oftentimes better than artificial props? Thank you for tuning in, and I hope you would enjoy listening to this interview with Eyal Shifroni. Hello, Eyal.
Hello.
How are you today?
Personally, I'm very fine. I had a successful teaching trip in China. It's a little bit a problem to come back to Israel in these days because the situation in the country is not good. But personally, I'm fine.
Thank you for joining me and for accepting the invitation for this interview, besides just coming back home from a long trip. I'm personally very excited because I've been following your Instagram account for quite some time, and every time I read your post or watch your video, I immediately have a smile on my face. It's just something uncontrollable. I find it's very beautiful how authentically and how much of presence there is in what you express and how you express. So it's very rare and unique, and in social media these days.
Thank you. That's interesting to hear. My daughter is helping me technically with the Instagram. I mean, I gave her the content, but she actually posts it because she's better on Instagram, and for me, I prefer to save my time for practice and for study of yoga.
She's doing a great job. So you we could say you have your personal social media manager.
Yes.
at home.
Yeah. Well, of course, I have to provide the photos and the text, but
She's managing that. As you know, the name of this project is the Pranayama, and the purpose for choosing this name was to emphasize the importance of Svadhyaya, self-study for Iyengar Yoga practitioner. So it's both a riddle and a reference to Patanjali Yoga Sutras. The fourth niyama is Svadhyaya. So what is Svadhyaya for you, Eyal? What does the study of self and the discovery of self mean to you?
Yeah, actually, I think yoga is Svadhyaya. Yoga is about svadhyaya, it's about self-study. And it's very beautiful, actually, how Patanjali, in 3 words, tapas svadhyaya ishvara pranidhana, describe not only yoga, but actually any spiritual path. Because any spiritual path must have these 3 elements. So it doesn't talk about any technique or any specific method, but it just says tapas svadhyaya ishvara pranidhana kriya yoga ha. It's sutra number 1 in chapter 2. So I think you need this discipline, you need this effort, which is tapas. You need self-study, and you need to surrender. So it is like I apply myself into the practice, tapas. I study myself, svadhyaya, and I surrender myself. This is all you need for to be in the spiritual path. And specifically, svadhyaya is something that you study yourself in the practice and in life. It's not limited only to on the mat. But I think there are two things I think that the practice is very important. First, it's like a lab. Like you go to the lab and you devote the time specifically for self-study, which in our busy life we are not always have enough mental capacity. But when we come to our practice space, we come there to study ourselves, to see how our reactions, to see how our mind functions and so on. Second, I think there is something special about the asanas that make your mind quiet. And then you can look better inside. So it's like ideal circumstances and conditions for svadhyaya, the practice of asanas and pranayama. So that's how I connect, Iyengar Yoga with svadhyaya. And basically, it is for me to study the last 3 kleshas. Our likes and dislikes, raga and dvesha, and our fears, abhinivesha. Because I find that avidya is quite difficult to study directly. It has to come, from the practice. Slowly you get more and more insight and wisdom. But what you can observe directly in the practice is the things you like, things you don't like, attraction, aversion, and your fears. So your rejections, yes, things you avoid. So I think, this for me is svadhyaya, is to study the raga, dvesha, and abhinivesha, basically, in order to finally to get to vidya, to knowledge.
Get rid of vidya and get
Yes,
to vidya.
get to vidya.
In your opinion, because in some translations of Patanjali Yoga Sutras, the word svadhyaya is not only self-study or study of self, but they also put,
study of scriptures.
Exactly.
Yes.
Do you incorporate it in your own practice? And at what point would you advise a practitioner of yoga to add this to their practice too?
Yes. I think, some people just do yoga as a kind of like fitness or whatever. But the moment you decide that yoga is your path, something that is important in your life, and you become more committed, let's say, not yet devoted, but committed to the practice, then you should have to start to know what is yoga. And the 2 texts I think that are most important are the sutras, of course, and the Bhagavad Gita. And they like mirror that reflect, and in that respect they help you in your svadhyaya, because by reading this and then applying it to the practice and to your life, Bhagavad Gita is more to the life. It gives you a tool to look at yourself and to see where you are in relation to like the Bhagavad Gita, which talks about, equanimity, talks about to act without expecting the fruit. How much we really can act without expecting some outcome, some result. So this, is the things that you observe through this text. So yeah, I think it both, which is to study the text and to apply it in your own practice and in your life, because you have to observe yourself throughout. In any action that you do is a chance to self-study.
Yeah, it's just not when you leave your yoga mat, put all the props aside,
Yes.
and now you're free to do whatever, but only on the yoga mat.
You can become like a egoist or self-centered and forget all the yama and niyama.
Yeah, that I think what Guruji spoke about in Light on Life, that you think that you have this virtues, and if a person is too proud of his virtues, it's actually pulling him back, stagnating, not helping him to progress or her to progress.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, especially in chapter 3, you have to overcome something which is maybe the most difficult, the powers that you get. I think that's why maybe the yogi gets the power so he can let go. And in chapter 3, Patanjali said that if you think that these powers, these siddhis are, the goal of yoga, then you will fall down from the grace of yoga. So the only when you surrender also this, then you can continue to Kaivalya, fourth chapter, which also mentioned in the third chapter. So yeah, Guruji is, talking about in life. He said that, talking about like Maitri. He said you cannot know love of God if you don't know human life.
You
And
cannot
that's why
know. Can
the,
you
the
repeat?
God of the love of God, if you haven't experienced human love. And that's why he was a family man. He has a relationship. He was not like a hermit in the somewhere in the jungles of the Himalayas.
Yeah, although he was offered to be one by
Yeah, sannyasi.
Shivananda, to become
Yeah.
sannyasi, and he refused
He
and said
didn't
that,
want. Yes.
yeah. Speaking of Guruji, I know that you met him for the first time when you went to Pune in 1988. Can you recall this moment? What was your first impression of him, and what do you think about him when you just met him? And maybe you have some favorite episode that still warms your heart.
Yeah. Well, there are many episodes. I think the first surprise that how short he is, because because in the photos in Light on Yoga, he looks so long, so tall. The limbs are so extended.
Yeah, he had very long
And
limbs.
yes, he has very long limbs, but his body looks long. And then when you see him and he's, up to here,
How tall
he
was
was
he?
like, I think 165 or something centimeters. Yeah, and in photos you cannot see it. So this was the first surprise. Then, of course, his strong personality, his eyes that are, like hawk eyes, very strong, very powerful. And yeah, later we met many times because I used to come for like 30 years, actually from 88 until 2014 when I was there when he passed away. And I participated in his cremation. Yeah, it was a very touching moment to be there at that time. But in 88, I remember I was very beginner in Iyengar Yoga and I didn't know much. And the practice for me was like, it felt a little bit like, the first drills, the first when you draft to the army and they make you run here and there, and you're exhausted. So after 2 hours class, I was hardly walking. I was somehow called to the guest house. It was like the ashram. And I went down and I had to sleep for 2 hours at least in order to recover from the exhaustion because he could take, everything out of you. I mean, you cannot play any game with him. And I remember that I was standing in Shirshasana, and then he came and slapped my leg, my left leg, the thigh, and he said, this leg, right leg is turning in, this one not, and slap. And this was more than 30 years ago, and I still remember it. So because he used to say that he's not hitting for punishment, he's hitting for education. So like very often when I stand on my head, I think about it. He turned the thigh in because he said, this one doesn't turn, this one turn, this one doesn't turn. So the things that you remember. And after that, few years, maybe 10 years later, I was there, and in the practice room, I was doing Shirshasana, a long Shirshasana, maybe 20 minutes. And I didn't think that he's watching me because he was doing his own practice on the corner. And then in the afternoon, I went to the library and he said, I saw your Shirshasana today. I said, okay. I said, was your mind in your legs all the time? He was asking me. I, I, I didn't know what to say. I was confused. I said, well, I really didn't know what to answer because my mind was not in the legs all the time for 20 minutes. Is it possible? So I just told him no or something like this. But it
You
was
could see.
another. Yes, yes. And yeah, he could see, yes. And I didn't know that he's watching me at all, the practice. Because it seems like he's so absorbed in his practice. And then we met a few times. I translated 3 books of his to Hebrew. One of them was not published finally, but 2 were published, Light on Pranayama and the Tree of Yoga. So I had a few questions about the translation, and I had happened a few times to have like interviews, short interviews with him. Always his strong personality was very amazing.
Has he ever come to Israel?
Yes, he came to Israel in '96, and of course I participated. And then Iyengar Yoga was just, in the beginning in Israel. So there were only 300 people attending the workshop, all the teachers and so on. We made some demonstration for him, all the teachers. And also there was the children's demonstration. I think if he would have come later, there was thousands of people.
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
Iyengar Yoga is spread in Israel very much. We have a lot of practitioners and teachers. But at that time, in '96, it was early.
So that is actually one of the biggest surprise I had when I came to India for the first time to study with Usha.
How many Israelis are there?
Not even 50%, 60% of the class would be people from Israel. I think I've never met so many Israelis in my life. But
Yeah, actually, if you want to meet many Israelis, you go to India. 60% of the people in India are Israelis.
possibly. But it's not only that, but also that all of them are very serious practitioners.
Yeah. I think the level of practice in Israel is quite high.
So what do you think is the secret behind so many Iyengar Yoga students and teachers in Israel? How many teachers are right now, by the way?
I don't know exactly, but maybe like 300 teachers, and we're not a very big country. We're like about 9 million, a little bit over 9 millions, but some of them are like maybe 2.5 millions are Arabs, which are not so interested in yoga, and religious people, which very few of them practice yoga. So from the other, it's quite high percentage of the practitioners. I don't know. Maybe Jewish people were always interested in new ideas and exploring the frontier of.
But it's a specific style.
Yeah, it's for more rational people, sensible people. It's more scientific, so somehow it appeals to many Israelis.
I hope it would, spread even further.
I hope also our leaders will start to practice yoga because they need it. Not only our leaders, but the leaders of all countries, but specifically our leaders now, they really need some yoga.
Has there any work been done in that direction to connect Iyengar Yoga with leaders of Israel government?
They're not interested.
I want to ask you about your first book about chair for yoga. You've done some profound exploration and research on the benefits of chair for the yoga practice. You wrote a book about it, A Chair for Yoga, a complete guide to Iyengar yoga practice with a chair. And some teachers in the Iyengar yoga community affectionately called you a chairman due to this work.
Yeah,
How did
especially Javar Ben-Gar, he likes to call me like, he's a good friend of mine and he's a funny person.
yes?
I really appreciate very much his light spirit and he calls me, oh, wait, the chairman is coming.
I'm curious whether some other Iyengar yoga teachers have any nicknames, or is it just...
Yeah, I think the summit adapted this also. I decided that, going to Pune and participating in so many workshops of international teachers that came to Israel, you accumulate a lot of knowledge, and then when you want to prepare a workshop or a class, I will start, to browse through my unordered notebooks. So I said, okay, I have to organize this knowledge somehow and more. So I wrote, I started to write something for myself actually, to have it more organized for myself as a photo, so I can always recall what we did. Of course, I have to. I'm very gratitude to all the teachers that, especially Guruji and Gitaji and Prashantji, but the other teachers like Birju Mehta, Faik Birya, Jabbar Bingara, and so on, many other teachers that taught me the use of props in general and the chair in particular. So it's not at all my invention. Of course, when you play with something creatively, you find new variation. But the basic, the idea of using chair is good. Credit goes to him, first of all. Anyway, but I just wrote something for myself. And then I decided, okay, if it helps me, maybe it can help other. It was in Hebrew. Maybe it can help other teachers. So I printed 300 copies and I brought them to a workshop in Israel, and it was sold out like this. And then one teacher, CP winner, she took it to United States and she gave a workshop according to this book. And they started to ask her, is it available in English? So she came back and she said, you have to translate it to English. So in the beginning, I was a little bit reluctant. I was not sure that it's so valuable that should make the effort to translate it. But then she kept nagging and said, you have to translate it. So I translated it. And then, as I said, the rest is history because it became so popular. And it was to me like, there is a story about the flying carpet. It takes you. So it was the flying chair for me because it took me all over the world finally to give workshops, and it all started from there. Of course, it continues with other things, other books that I wrote.
It was
Certain
translated
teaching.
into Spanish, I saw, into some other
Like
languages.
I think 11 or 12 languages, including like Korean, Japanese, Chinese, of course. So all my books are in Chinese, and many European languages like Polish, Italian, Portuguese, Spanish, French, Russian, and more. Yes, and now recently to Vietnamese. So maybe I'll go next year to teach in Vietnam also.
Yeah, what an
So
amazing journey
it's
it took
really
it.
amazing, and I was not expecting anything. It was not. I didn't in my crazy dreams. I didn't think it would be like this. It was not something that I said, okay, I have to write a book in order to become famous. No, I didn't even think about it. It just came out like this. Probably
Mm.
some good karma or something.
You just did your duty. You shared your knowledge
Yes,
and
yes,
what you've
yeah,
learned
and
without
everything
any.
just came out of.
Are you still
Uh,
experimenting and uncovering new ways to
yes,
integrate
yes,
chair into your
yes.
yoga practice?
Just recently in China now I find some new variations.
Oh,
because
wow.
it's really endless. But I'm so happy to get so many positive feedbacks from people that tell me that my books help them a lot in the practice, and so each feedback like this really warms my heart and gives me motivation to do more. Because to write book is a lot of work. Is the writing, the photo, then to put all together, and then the editing, and finally the graphic design, everything, a lot of details, and it's a lot of work. But when you get such positive feedback, it is some, modest contribution to our communities. So,
How about your new book, Yoga in Nature?
mm,
How would you describe it? And
yes.
in your opinion, who would benefit from it the most?
Well, first of all, I think it's a kind of evolution from my book that also I did with Oad Nachtori, my friend, my student, and professor of philosophy himself. Um, that we, in the psychophysical lab, it's about yoga practice and the body-mind problem, which is a philosophical problem that explore the relationship between the body and mind. What are the nature of these relationships? It's a very known problem in philosophy, and many said there is no solution to this problem because it's evident that there are very strong connections between the body and mind, but it's really difficult to account for it philosophically. How this connection this really is done? How come you can come out of the material world, or the opposite? How is your mind, which is actually not material and it's not behave by the law of science, can affect your body, which is in the Western philosophy is looked as like a machine actually. So we try to present another view. Anyway, in this book, we explore the relationship between the body and the mind. And then now we're exploring the relationship between the human being and the environment, the nature. And, personally, I find myself get a lot of inspiration from nature. I like to practice in nature in all kinds of, there are 3 chapters in the practice on the beach, practice in the woods, and practice in the mountain with the rocks. And many Iyengar Yoga practitioners, they said, they think they cannot practice outdoors because there are no props, there is no floor. So in this book, actually, I want to show that there are natural props, which often are better than artificial props. And I use them a lot. And over the year, I learned to use many things as props, especially the sand at the beach, because I live next to the beach. And in Israel, I can practice 8 months of the year on the beach. I practice like 3 or 4 times in the morning in the beach. So I just wanted to share this because there's something mysterious for me that when I go and I practice on the beach, somehow the body opens naturally. And asana, difficult asana that I struggle with at home, they just become effortless. And also the mind very quickly become focused. And there is some energy because of the space, the environment, the elements of nature that I think it's marvelous. And we just wanted to share it. Often I meet Oad in the beach in the morning. He's more busy than me, so he comes and he practices less time. And then he goes to his work in the Technion, the University of Israel. And I stay there more because I'm more committed and it's my job also, my hobby and my job. But we meet there often, and so we decided to write a book about it. I hope many people will benefit because people can take it to the vacation and to study how to use the props, natural props, for the practice. So they don't have to give up the props even if they go to practice outdoors.
Yeah, there is no excuse to skip your self-practice,
Yes,
even if you're in
yes,
nature.
yeah, and the opposite, because actually nature gives you a lot to practice. It's not that I always practice in nature. Sometimes it's nice to practice at home. But yeah, as I said, during 7 or 8 months, practice a lot on the beach. And if I happen to go to some other places, like for hikes or treks, I also practice.
And are there people around you in the beach who see you practicing? Do they approach you and ask
Yeah, some
what
of
you're
them
doing?
just, say, oh, very nice, very nice. Some of them became my students.
Oh, so it's also a nice way to promote the Iyengar yoga.
Well, I don't do it for this, but I try to be more with myself. But people, I remember one accident where I was doing Shirshasana and somebody was passing by. And then after like 30 or 40 minutes, he came back and I was in Sarvangasana. He said, wow, such a long time he's in Shirshasana. Yeah, he didn't say Shirshasana, he said standing on his head. But I was already doing Sarvangasana. I didn't even know. It just saw me upside down. So in the summer, it's more crowded on the beach, especially in August. But in other months, there's less people because it's not like the beach of Tel Aviv. It's the beach. I live in more than the northern country, side of the country, so there are not so many people at the beach. Then some people are more regular in walking along the beach or running. So already we know each other. They always see me there practicing. And, there is the chapter about practicing the forest. We don't have so many forests in Israel. We do have some. And the desert, we go to the desert, but it could be in mountains anywhere because we're using the rocks. Photos actually were taken in Sinai, which is Egypt,
Do you think
because we like.
connecting with the elements also enriches the quality of asana?
Definitely, definitely. Again, I don't know exactly how to explain it. It's like the body-mind problem. That our consciousness is very mysterious. I don't know why when I do Shirshasana, I feel the way I feel. I don't know why, but it's evident. It's a fact. So it's a fact that when I practice in the beach, I feel something different. As I said, my body opens spontaneously. I can do more challenge poses without struggle, just like this. I'm sure it's an element of nature, and I think especially in our time where nature is in such a big threat on Earth, it's important to connect with nature. So maybe it's also part of the message of the book.
Yes,
Go out to nature and appreciate the beauty of nature.
a
So
reminder.
we need to protect the nature.
Yes, so true. It's a good reminder for us to do that and
Yeah,
appreciate and take care of our Mother Earth.
it's a precious gift that we got, and we have to preserve it.
You just have finished listening to the first part of my conversation with Eyal Shifroni. The second part will be coming shortly. I hope this podcast will serve you as an inspiration in your yoga practice and support you in your own study and discovery of the self. See you in the next episode.